All right. So, guys, the other day, I was doing a little bit of research on a on a topic that I've wanted to make a video about for a while, and it just so happens this is the video that I'll be making about it. And ironically enough, this article I think is actually just perfect for me to cover on stream. Just reading this article should make the pretty much get the point across. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about why conservatives love defending pedophilia so much. We're going to talk about why they do it on like an ideological level, and we're going to talk about why they do it on a personal level. But first, we're going to read this article that talks about the steps that Republicans have been taking in our country to preserve the practice of child marriage. Mind you, when I say child marriage, I mean young girls that are underage getting married to, with parental consent, to like older men. Is basically what's happening here. Conservatives are very, very much in favor of this. They love when older men are raping underage girls because as long as they're white, it means the white race is being continued. A huge part of conservative culture is men finding a small, subservient, helpless woman that will literally listen and do whatever they say that doesn't know any better. And frankly, as our society gets more and more educated, the only way to find that sort of archetype of woman is by being a pedophile and trying to marry children. Because now, in our society, it's becoming more acceptable for women to become strong and independent and to work their own jobs. And modern day women, as conservatives on 4chan like to say, don't want to be barefoot in the kitchen making pies all day and getting and pumping out babies. They want to live their lives and do things. So now conservatives are pushing to fight against the raising of the minimum marriage or the raising of the minimum marriage age because they want to be able to fuck children because those children are, almost like the archetype of women that they fantasize about. End child marriage in the US, you might be surprised at who's opposed. Conservatives have found some surprising allies as they fight efforts to raise the marriage age. A bill that would have ended child marriage in Idaho, which has no minimum age for couples who want to wed, died in the state house this year. Republican lawmakers who control the legislature opposed it, including Representative Brian Zollinger, who said it went too far. Obviously, I'm against child marriage, the GOP lawmaker told NBC News, but basically marriage is a contract between people that shouldn't require government permission. By the way, I want to remind you, these are the people that incessantly call like the LGBT community pedophiles, by the way. Every time you see a conservative, and I want to be very clear with this. Every time you see a conservative call like LGBT people pedophiles, that is an admission of being a pedophile right there. And as a matter of fact, the second you see a conservative do that, you might as well just start your own predator poaching channel. Unironically, my dream is to like do something similar to like the Predator Hunter channels, but for conservative figures, because all I'm going to say here is that, listen up, guys. There are quite a few pedophiles that are making conservative content online. If you look at the general consensus among Republicans in this country when it comes to child marriage, and you look at how many non-political YouTubers already have been discovered to be pedophiles, how many secret pedophiles do you think are hiding in like the anti-SJW online community? I'm willing to bet Stone Toss is probably a pedophile. That motherfucker is constantly calling like the left and LGBT people pedophiles. That motherfucker's projecting. Same goes for Nick Fuentes. Matter of fact, Nick Fuentes went on a rant recently about how the age of consent is a feminist construct, a leftist feminist construct that ought to be abolished. He doesn't like the age of consent. He wants it to be abolished because it's a feminist construct. He also went on to talk about how he thinks women's rights ought to be comparable to that of Taliban rule in Afghanistan. He believes that child marriage is good and that women ought to have the same amount of rights as they do under Taliban rule in Afghanistan. He said that. Those are all beliefs that he holds. So just gives you an idea on like the general conservative view on things. Even as more states take action to end child marriage, concerns about government overreach along with scant data about the extent of the problem have driven skepticism to reform across the country. The divide has sometimes created unlikely alliances between conservative politicians and liberal-leaning groups, including the ACLU and Planned Parenthood. In California and Louisiana, opponents of change have argued argued that raising the minimum marriage age is an ineffective solution, since other child welfare laws already can prevent young girls from being exploited. And other states, such as Massachusetts, have raised doubts about the extent of the problem, even as experts note that survivors are often reluctant to come forward. By the way, I don't like liberals either, okay? I think liberals are too okay with child marriage as well, all right? Liberalism is, at the end of the day, based in a lot of conservative social beliefs. Like, there's a lot of general social ideas that liberals still believe and agree with conservatives on, that besides like gay marriage and like BLM and whatever. Like, when it comes to more, like, there are some issues where liberals and conservatives agree where I do not think they need to be agreeing, and this is one of them, okay? There is absolutely no excuse whatsoever to not pass these laws, even if there is already existing policies that help prevent this. There is no reason ever to oppose efforts to make these child marriage laws, illegal, right? In California and Louisiana, opponents of change have argued that raising the minimum age is an inefficient solution. Idaho has the highest rate of child marriage in the U.S., according to a national report from Unchained at Last, an organization dedicated to ending the practice in the U.S. The Democratic sponsor of the Idaho legislation, which would have set the marriage age at 16, said that she thought her bill was a modest compromise. The bill that would have set the minimum age for children to be married to adults to 16 was seen as too radical. Raising the age of the minimum age to 16 was a compromise that was deemed too radical, that did not pass. A modest compromise. This is the country we live in, by the way. Did you guys know that in only 4 states in all of the United States is child marriage illegal? Only in 4 states out of the 50 is it illegal. Only 4 states meet the qualifications for a no child marriage state. In every other state in the union, there is some way, some loophole, some method through which adult men can be, married to 14, 15, 12-year-old girls. Opposition to reform in California and New Hampshire. In California, a bill set the minimum marriage age at 18. The state's age of consent failed in 2017 after objections from lawmakers and liberal groups such as the state's American Civil Liberties Union. The state currently has no minimum marriage age and collects little to no data on child marriages. The ACLU argued the bill unnecessarily and unduly intrudes on the fundamental rights of marriage without sufficient cause, adding that largely banning marriage under 18 before we have evidence regarding the nature and severity of the problem, however, puts the cart before the horse. Other groups like Planned Parenthood and the National Center for Youth Law, a youth advocacy organization, agreed. I hate this. This is literally just like, listen, liberals, stop compromising with conservatives on whether or not it's okay for underage girls to be married to adult men, okay? This is my problem with liberals in this country. By the way, I want to say California liberals might be the worst, okay? I've seen the homeless problem here in California, and it's a serious problem. Like, the homelessness issue out here in California is serious, and it's because liberal politicians, mostly Democratic politicians, hate homeless people. Liberals like poor people. They're cool with poor people. But if you're so poor that you're homeless, now you're a burden. And if you're poor and you're living in an area they want to gentrify, now you're definitely a burden. And they just want you out. They don't give a fuck about you. There are plenty of positions that I hold where I think liberals are in the wrong. Okay? That's why I don't really identify as a liberal. I may not identify fully as a leftist, but I don't identify as a liberal, that's for sure. Whew. There's a lot of reasons why I will never identify as a liberal again in my life, at least not outside of ironic jokes. After Levesque learned that the state's minimum marriage age was 14 for boys and 13 for girls, in what world would there need to be a disparity in that respect? And in what world are those ages even close to high enough? She made the issue a focus of a Girl Scout project, compiling research, contacting her state representatives, and reaching out to advocacy groups. In 2017, a bill was introduced in the State House to raise the marriage age to 16, the state's statutory age of consent. I was just trying to get as many people behind this as possible, Levesque, now 20, told NBC News. But a legislative maneuver killed the bill indefinitely after the state GOP representative, Republican, David Bates and others raised concerns about whether teens could marry while one was deployed for military service. Bates lambasted Levesque and scolded his colleagues in a speech on the state house floor at the time. We're asking the legislature to repeal a law that's been on the books for over a century, that's been working without difficulty on the basis of a request from a minor doing a Girl Scout project, he said. You ever notice why like pedophiles that advocate for like so one thing I've noticed about pedophiles specifically on Twitter is they use kid as an insult very often. Have you noticed that? If you ever see maps or pedophiles or whatever on Twitter, anyone who disagrees with them about their opinions on like abolishing the age of consent, they always use "you're a child" as an insult, because at the end of the day, they don't see children as people. They see children as lesser than them and thus deserving of the rape that they want to commit upon them. Every conservative who has this opinion, who supports these candidates, wants to rape children, and they just want to rape children, and so they fight against these policies so they can get away with it. All I'm saying is Trump was very good friends with Epstein. A lot of Republican and Democrat politicians were good friends with Epstein. All right, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the Democratic and Republican politicians that have been preventing these policies from getting passed, mostly Republicans, were all on Epstein's black book. No doubt in my mind they were on Epstein's black book. This time I had all my bases covered, Levesque said. It's definitely a big issue and I'm trying to fight it. Louisiana's compromise. Idaho and California are not alone in not having a minimum marriage age. A majority of states which issue marriage licenses allow 16 and 17-year-olds to marry. A few allow 14-year-olds, and 13 states have no minimum marriage age as of September. And 13 states have no minimum marriage age as of September. That means these are new changes. That means that these Republican states just recently made it so that there is no minimum age to get married. This means theoretically a 50-year-old could marry an 8-year-old. As granted, it would be pedophilia if anything sexual happened, and it would be illegal. But the marriage is legal completely. It's completely legal marriage-wise. Before 2016, when Virginia became the first state to put its marriage age into law, more than half of the states had no minimum marriage age fixed by statute. Frady Rice, a survivor of forced marriage and the founder of Unchained at Last, told NBC News that she finds some of the rationales against raising the minimum marriage age in all states to 18 baffling because the federal government considers marriage under 18 in foreign countries a human rights abuse. According to the group, nearly 250,000 children were married in the U.S. from 2000 to 2010, the majority of whom were young girls marrying older men. This is happening, and it's happening at an alarming rate, she said. In Louisiana, a heated debate erupted in the legislature this year as lawmakers haggled over whether to set a minimum marriage age in the state. Republicans and a handful of Democrats, that should give you an idea of how much of an issue this is on both sides of the aisle. Yeah, it's a problem with some Democrats and they're bad, but it's just Republicans, period, pushing against these policies to add a minimum age to get married. Argued that teens should be allowed to marry in certain instances, such as pregnancy or military service. If they're both 16 years old and they both consent to sexual relations and they're about to have a baby, why wouldn't we want them to be married? Said Representative Nancy Landry, a Republican. Yes. Nancy Landry, what if one is 30 and the other is 16? Do you want them to get married? Because you're advocating for laws that would allow that to happen. Kathleen Benfield, the legislative director of the Louisiana Family Forum, an influential conservative nonprofit in the state, said that her organization was also concerned about forcing a teen mother to give birth out of wedlock if the age was set at 18 with no exceptions. We would oppose any exploitation of young girls by older men. That's the bottom line, Benfield said, but we just wanted to make sure that the value of marriage as a cherished institution was supported. In the end, the group gave the bill lukewarm support thanks to provisions such as requiring that the age difference between a minor and adult be no more than 3 years, placing stringent guidelines for judges to review each case and mandating the collection of marriage data in the state to study the extent of child marriage. The bill passed in June, setting the minimum age at 16, and the law was set to take effect in August. Roadblocks for activists. Rice, who lobbies lawmakers as part of her group's advocacy work against child and forced marriage, said she had seen some success in direct outreach. Where we have less luck is legislators who say, I don't care, a girl gets pregnant, she's got to get married. She said, or the ones who look at me and say, I've had this in multiple states. Well, Joseph married Mary when she was 8. If it was good enough for God, why shouldn't it be good enough for us? She believes lawmakers often conflate the maturity of some teens with the legal capacity to enter a marriage, which is considered a legal contract that many laws specify only adults can enter into or annul. For someone to say if you're 17 and you're mature and in love that it's somehow okay for you to marry, no, it's not, because you're still not an adult, she said. You cannot be allowed to marry before you are allowed to file for divorce. That's just so obvious. That is true. You have to be 18 years or older to file for divorce. But you can, in 14 states as of September, 2019, you can be married before you're old enough to legally get divorced. Now, you'll notice that many of the conservative and Republican talking points in that segment had to do with many of the arguments they use to justify their pedophilic beliefs are the same arguments they use to support their anti-choice beliefs. So, for example, they don't want teenagers having children out of wedlock. What they want is for teenage girls, if they get pregnant, to be saddled down with an older man for the rest of their lives they're forced to marry, that has every bit of power over them, that takes away all of their bodily autonomy and their ability to engage in the world as an adult. They want that to happen. You'll notice that a lot of the talking points we just saw right there were extraordinarily similar to talking points used by conservatives who are anti-choice, who are anti-abortion. They make the same arguments. They all want to have a harem of 15-year-old underage girls that are all forced into marriages with them, that have zero financial independence, they can never get divorced, who legally can't even get divorced because they're not old enough to, because we have laws in this country that say you have to be 18 years or older to get divorced, but no laws that say you have to be a certain age to get married, because Republicans are anti-divorce, because they're against women's rights. Is it not clear to you guys, perhaps, that we have a problem, that there's a pedophile problem in the right? That not only is there it's not by chance, by the way. There is not a pedophile problem on the right by chance. There's not. It is not a chance situation. It is very much on purpose, because the conservative ideology is one in which, if you follow the natural conclusion of their beliefs, you arrive at a position in which pedophilia and child marriage is justifiable. If it means you can preserve conservative values, many of those include pedophilia. I mean, pedophilia and child marriage is extremely conservative. That's one of the first things that comes to my mind when I think conservative culture. I think child marriage. Yeah, older men marrying young, underage girls. That's straight, first thing that comes to mind when I think of conservative culture, right? That's conservatism. And that's the dream for them. That's the dream for them. They want to be able to basically control underage girls in this country, both financially, on a maturity level, on a social level, and even on a biological level when it comes to their rights to get abortions, or to get, and especially on a legislative level when it comes to their rights. And not to mention child pageants. Conservatives will lose their minds about the medical institutions in this country suggesting that it's okay for children to get on hormone blockers if they're deemed to have gender dysphoria, something that we've done for children with pituitary issues for a very, very long time. For those of you guys that don't understand science, sometimes humans are born with pituitary issues where their body puts off too many hormones or too little. Usually, if you're going to take hormone blockers, it's too many at a young age. And doctors, even though this kid is not trans or anything, put the kid on hormone blockers to prevent them from growing a beard at 8. That's a thing that happens. We've been giving kids hormone blockers for unrelated to being trans reasons for a long time, and yet conservatives lose their minds over it and say it's pedophilia. And meanwhile, Republican politicians across the fucking board are fighting tooth and nail to protect their right to rape and impregnate and marry underage girls. So, with all that said, that is why conservatives defend pedophilia so hard. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to my channel, and ringing the bell icon if you haven't already and you want to see more content from me. Also consider dropping a comment down below, as well as perhaps even following some of my social media linked in the description, including my TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, my fan Discord. I even got a merch store where you can buy my brand new I Was Radicalized by Minecraft Xanderhall brand t-shirt, among some other merch I've uploaded to the merch store. Links are all in the description, of course. And don't forget to join my fan Discord, a community of fans of mine that can just hang out, and sometimes I even hop in there and I do watch parties of movies with you guys. I play video games with people, and sometimes just hang out and talk. It's a great community. We're trying to hit 6,000 members in the Discord by the end of the year, so go ahead and hop in. And of course, if you got the money for it, you don't need it for anything else, and you just don't know what to do with it, any donations you can offer are highly, highly appreciated. Particularly if you can subscribe, gift a sub, or donate over on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or donate or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Patreon, or even through Streamlabs. No matter how you support me, though, regardless of how you did it, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.